After the last few years' hot weather, I've happily made one important change to the chicken run. The new roof gives the hens a lot more shade, and it stops the coop and the run sitting under the direct sun all day. And that has made the run a much more comfortable place for the girls to live during the heat. But shade is only part of the problem. The coop itself is still basically the same as it was before. It has passive ventilation and it's raised off the ground, but on hot, still days, the air inside can still feel very static. At the front, we've already got quite a large open vent, so I don't really need to force air in from here. And this works as a good intake, allowing lots of it to enter. The real question is whether I can help pull that air through the coop, using the rear wall as the extraction point. I'm not expecting to cool the coop down. That's not the plan for this video. I just want to see if I can get a bit more fresh air moving through it when the weather turns hot and still later in the season. So this is the kit I bought. It was one of the cheapest solar fan sets I could find, and the idea is about as simple as it gets. A small solar panel, 2 fans, and the basic hardware needed to mount them. Before cutting any holes in the coop though, I wanted to see whether any of it was actually worth installing. The 2 fans are roughly the sort of size you'd expect to find cooling a computer, and they connect directly to the solar panel. There's no battery, no charge controller, and no stored power. Whatever sunlight is available at the time is all the fans have to work with. The cable itself is only around 3 mm thick, so there isn't much to it physically, nor does there need to be. There's about 175 centimeters of cable between the panel and the fans when everything is connected. That matters because the panel needs to be somewhere with reliable sunlight, while the fans need to reach the rear of the coop, where I was planning to use them as extractors. It should reach in my setup, although there isn't much spare cable if the panel needs to move somewhere better later. Each fan also has arrows moulded into the casing, showing the direction of airflow. That's useful because I want the fans pulling air out of the coop, rather than blowing air back inside. Each fan has its own connector, so they simply plug into the 2 leads coming from the solar panel. There are also 2 metal guards, which I definitely want fitted before putting these anywhere near the hens. You only get 6 small cable ties, so they're really just for tidying the wiring, rather than mounting anything substantial. For fixing the fans themselves, the kit includes a small bag of nuts and bolts. They're long enough to pass through the fan casing, although whether they'll also go through the wooden wall of the coop is something I'll need to check before installation. The panel has 4 mounting holes, and the kit includes suction cups that push through them. That gives you the option of mounting the panel to glass, although that isn't much use for where I was planning to put it. There are also a couple of small carabiners, which give you another simple way of hanging the panel from a frame or support. If the panel gets sunlight, the fans should run. And if they move enough air, this could be a cheap way of improving the ventilation. But before anything gets attached to the coop, it needs to prove that it actually works. Connecting everything only takes a few seconds, and immediately 1 fan starts spinning. So far, so good. The basic system works, but the question is what happens when conditions are less than perfect. Cover the panel completely, and the answer is immediate. The fans slow down and stop. Remove the cover, the sunlight returns, and they start again. There's nowhere to store the energy, so the fans are completely dependent on the light reaching the panel. Next, I wanted to see whether they were actually moving enough air to be useful. I didn't have an airflow meter, so the next test was considerably less scientific. A feather should at least make the airflow visible. The first problem was trying to hold the fan in the sun and keep the feather in the right place at the same time. But once I found the right angle, there was definitely airflow. Well, that wasn't how I expected this test to end.
It was moving air. The quality isn't great.
One fan was destroyed, and somewhere in the process, it managed to cut my thumb as well.
Okay, that's disappointing.
Whatever caused that failure, it happened during an ordinary test, before I'd even fitted anything to the Coop. And that's enough for me. I can no longer trust the kit to install. I could still fit the surviving fan though. But that won't be the system I bought. The plan was to use both fans to pull air through the Coop. And after what just happened, I'm not cutting into the wall to install half of a kit I no longer trust. But abandoning this kit doesn't make the reason I bought it disappear. I've lived long enough to notice that hot, dry spells seem to be coming more often, and often lasting longer than I remember. The run is already well shaded, and that makes a real difference. But shade and airflow are not the same thing. On hot, still days, I still want to know that enough fresh air is moving through the Coop. And on this particular afternoon, the thermometer inside was sitting at around 30 degrees Celsius. So rather than buying another small batteryless gadget and hoping it lasts, I'm starting to think that a proper solar setup for the whole run would make more sense. There's room here for a larger panel, and somewhere protected for a battery and controller. It could be built properly, expanded over time, and provide a reliable source of power where I actually need it. Ventilation would still be the priority. But once the power is here, it could potentially support other useful things around the run as well. The automatic door, some lighting, and perhaps the cameras. But for now, this little experiment will have to end. The fan failed before it ever reached the Coop, and I'm not going to use what remains. But the bigger project is still worth doing. Have you ever built a small off-grid solar system for a Coop shed or garden? I'd be interested to know what worked, what didn't, and what you do differently next time. And before the next hot spell arrives, I'm planning a separate video looking at the practical things we already do to help the hens through hot weather. And once that's ready, you'll find it here.